All right.
Very good. We got the notification. Thank you very much.
Great.
Yeah, Rachel, let's give him a few more minutes and then we can get started. I believe Jim McGrath was intending to join as well.
Yeah.
We quite a few of the community residents couldn't make it because they're working. So thus we need the recording to send it around our group so they can give us some feedback as well. Happy anniversary, Andrew.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Been a minute. I wasn't sure I'd make today's call. It's my 26th wedding anniversary, but we've been together a lot longer than that, so it's a little bit of a milestone. Yeah.
Congratulations. Yes.
Yeah.
That is quite a milestone.
Yeah. So a friend of mine says, I'm not much into birthdays. They just come and happen, but anniversaries, you got to work for.
That's very well put. I haven't heard that before, but yeah.
Mm.
If you get this, you want to get on, well, I will just send you again the link just in case you do get this and you can jump on. All right. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Who was that, Steve?
I was hoping she was, I mean, she said she was going to make it. She's not here and she didn't answer. So,
Okay.
I'm going to send her some stuff. The link again. Come on.
When you're finished, Steve, we'll finish up what you're doing. Let's get started.
Okay. All right. Give me just a second.
I just called Jim. He didn't pick up, or Colleen, which is sort of rare. So hopefully he's at his computer trying to figure something out.
Okay. Oh, looks like Ben Sensatos just joined in
All right.
on the bottom there. Very good.
Hey there, I had a meeting canceled.
Hey, Ben, good to hear from you.
Let me know when you're ready, Steve.
Yeah, I'll give it one more minute and then let's get started, Rachel. Okay. Okay. Yeah, Rachel, just go ahead and get started, and then if people join in, we'll just have them join in the middle. Okay.
All right. Thank you, folks, for taking the time to talk with us today about Treasure Island Transportation Plan updates. So we'll start off with some introductions because there are definitely new folks in the room today. So I'll start with SFCTA folks, and then Madison, hand it to you, and then TIOC folks, you can introduce yourselves as well. Rachel Hyatt, I'm the Deputy for Planning at SFCTA and have been a lead on the Treasure Island Transportation Planning for a few years. Swanee?
Hi, I'm Swanee Cho. I'm Assistant Deputy Director at the SFCTA, and I'm focused on exclusively on Treasure Island stuff, and I've been here for a few months now. So I've met some of you before. Eric?
My name is Eric Young. I'm the Communications Director at the Transportation Authority.
Madison?
Hello, everyone. My name is Madison Tam. I'm a legislative aide for Supervisor Matt Dorsey, newly appointed supervisor representing District 6, which includes Treasure Island.
And TIOC folks, would you mind introducing yourselves as well?
Okay. Any particular order? I guess we'll just go. Steve Stallone with the Treasure Island Organizing Committee. Andrew?
Andrew Sullivan with the San Francisco Board Sailing Association.
Jim?
Jim Morowski, owner of Treasure Island Wines, TIOC. Tom?
Yeah, hey, Tom Gansberry. I'm a longtime visitor to Treasure Island doing water sports. And Paul. Tagging Paul.
You're on mute. You're on mute, Paul. Unmute.
Hello, Paul Morowski, co-owner of Treasure Island Wines and on the organizing committee.
Ben?
Hi there, Ben Seistedos, Treasure Island resident, TIOC.
Nice to meet everyone, because this is my first time in this setting. Not sure if it's anyone else's first time in this setting.
And Rachel, who's the dial-in 415? Is that one of your folks?
With you.
Oh.
Well, we got you twice there, Eric.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
Eric. No problem. Okay. Well, go ahead, Rachel. Rachel, go get started. Yeah.
Yep. So we have, purpose today, I think where we last left off is January, February timeframe where the committee took an action. We got a lot of public comment, including from TIOC and all of the folks represented here. So we have been since then seeking to incorporate as much of that feedback as we can into revised proposals that would be revised from what the committee adopted before bringing something back to the full board. And so as we're working through that, we want to start briefing all the folks who provided comment back in the early part of the year. And so we're starting to do that now and are going to also arrange for some broader outreach opportunities later in the summer, fall. So we anticipate this going into the fall time period with the outreach and the development of revised proposals. So that's the purpose today, is to share with you some of the conceptual updates and have a conversation about the direction that those are going. And I will hand it over to Swanee.
Great, thank you. So we just wanted to do a quick recap of where we had been. I think that you are all very familiar with our base toll and affordability program. And over the years, under Rachel's leadership, the program has evolved a little bit. And most recently, in January, the TIMA committee did hear and recommended approval of the base toll and affordability program. And that looks like this. Just as a quick recap, you should be pretty familiar with this, but the base toll is $5 at the peak hours during weekdays, with a 50% discount for the low and moderate income households. And that applies to the whole entire Bay Area. And then the 100% exemption would be for current residents of Treasure Island and the very low income households. And we wanted to note also that we also approved the cash subsidy aspect of the affordability program, wherein the employees of Treasure Island local serving businesses and nonprofits are also subsidized for their commute costs. And then in the off-peak and weekends, the base toll goes down to $250. Again, a 50% discount for the low and moderate income households and a 100% exemption for the very low and current residents, and no toll at night, which would be 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. on weekdays, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. on weekends. So that's just a recap of where we had been. So the full toll would apply to travelers that were in the top 2 income quintiles, the kind of the high and medium income. What we wanted to get your thoughts on today are 2 different options that provide additional affordability. So based on what we had heard about the need for further affordability for the, not just the very low, but the low income residents, we are looking at an option that would extend the 100% exemption to the low income Treasure Island residents. So that would be the current residents, the very low and the low, which would be the sort of the lower 40% of the income band would be fully exempt from the toll. And then the non-resident low income folks would sort of stay in this 50% discount band. That obviously that has an additional cost, and it does sort of move the needle a little bit on mode share, which we're trying to preserve, but we thought this was a feasible option to present. The second option for toll affordability is to actually provide the 100% exemption to all low-income households in the entire 9-county Bay Area. That would mean that fully 40% of the population would be eligible for a complete exemption from the toll. To make that balance out, we would move the moderate income households to the sort of full fare category, so that they would be subject to paying the full toll. So I can actually, let me also just for reference, wanted to show you where we are with the actual dollar amounts for what we're talking about. The very low is less than 55% of area median income, which in 2021 was $73,250 for a family of 4. And you can see the sort of the progression of the income threshold. So the moderate income is 80 to 100%, 120%, sorry, which would be between 106 and essentially $160,000 per year. And then geographically, the eligibility is, when we talk about residents, we're talking about all residents of the Treasure Island and Yerba Buena Island, and all travelers are travelers living in the 9 Bay Area counties, including the rest of San Francisco. So that those are the kind of the toll discounts and exemptions. Those 2 options that we wanted to sort of describe here and discuss with you, get your feedback. In addition, we do want to discuss these kind of non-toll, well, the first are transportation demand management measures that we also sort of developed in response to some of the comments we had heard from the public. So these are individual things that require a little more study, but wanted to get your thoughts on that. So one is providing discount to transit passes to more of the enrollees of nonprofit programs on the island, in addition to employees. So that would be the transit pass that is good for ferry, Muni, and East Bay service that would be provided at a discount. We could also work with organizations to set up carpools, van pools, and park and ride options that would allow greater accessibility to the island for folks who have families without necessarily driving their own car and paying a toll. We could also work with the MTA to expand their Van Gogh program to Treasure Island and help facilitate, I think those are specifically for school trips. And then we would work with TIDA to provide storage for equipment that would be hard to transport on transit. So these are all different ways that we thought could address some of the concerns that we had heard. In addition, back on the toll, we could look at increasing the subsidy, the cash subsidy for nonprofit program participants. So this would be reviewing the formula to make the subsidy based on the number of enrollees for a given program instead of just the employees, which is what the currently approved policy is. So those were the sort of affordability related measures. I will just finish. I have one more slide, which is switching gears a little bit, but another concern that we had heard was just the kind of procedural and having a regular means of input from the community. So we were we are in the process of developing a recommendation for a community advisory committee for TIMA specifically. And it would be sort of modeled on the CAC that exists for the Transportation Authority or others kind of special purpose projects. The purpose obviously is for the CAC to be able to provide feedback to the TIMA board on policies, operations, and the development of the TIMA program in general, and to be, to help us sort of get the word out, publicize programs, and communicate things back to the Treasure Island community. So this is literally just a first pass. The membership would be 5 to 7 members representing various kind of groups on Treasure Island: residents, businesses, nonprofits, recreational users, etc., reflecting the racial and gender diversity of the islands. The members would be appointed by, I think it would be sort of an open application and appointed by the TIMA board for 4-year terms. But all of that is, I welcome your feedback. So that's kind of what we had to present today for your feedback and discussion. I can go back to the option. So would love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, I got a question. Let's see, it was changes in the discounts to nonprofits and employees. Do we know what I'm talking about? I don't. But where we last left it, the employees, it was only the only ones that were eligible were employees for food businesses, particularly, as I understood it, the 2 restaurants and the grocery stores. But that was it. Is that still the same?
Yes, that definition hasn't changed. We are trying to target sort of the neighborhood serving businesses.
Yeah. Well,
So this doesn't
Even-
cover any of the businesses on the island, other than the 3 that Steve mentioned. It doesn't cover any of those, and it doesn't cover nonprofits like the folks at the sailing center, right?
Okay, I got a question. For instance, if you have a restaurant, you have a restaurant, you have a grocery store, you have a grocery store, you have a food store, you have a food store, you have a grocery store, you have a food store, you have a food store, you have a grocery store, you have a food store, you have a grocery store, you have a food store, you have a grocery store, you have a food store, you have a grocery store, you have a food store, you have a grocery store, you have a food store, you have a grocery store, you have a food store, you have a grocery store, you have a food store, you have a grocery store, you have a food store, you have a grocery store, you have a food store, you have a grocery store, you have a food store, you have a grocery store, you have a food store, you have a grocery store, you have a food store, you have a grocery store, you have a food store, you have a grocery store, you have a food store, you have a grocery store, you have a food store, you have a grocery store, you have a food store, you have a grocery store, you have a food store, you have a grocery store, you have a food store, you have a grocery store, you have a food
I think Jim, you may have cut out there for a minute, but just to go back over what the adopted program does cover for eligibility. It covers food services, which there are 3, and it covers all nonprofits. So any nonprofit on the island, including the sailing center, my understanding is yes, that they are a nonprofit. And for the for-profit commercial tenants of TIDA, we do ask TIDA to take into account your cost of business when they are setting your rent.
So the proposal really hasn't changed all that much from the last time that you talked about the subsidies for business.
The change is not in the eligibility, but in the amount of the subsidy that would be received by, for instance, the sailing center, and the ball fields were a set of the feedback providers that we were trying to address here, because the formula that was originally proposed for the subsidy was based on number of employees. But we heard the feedback that, for somebody like the sailing center, it's not, the cost isn't really, or the burden isn't really their employees, it's their enrollees, it's their program participants. And so the change would be to redo the formula so that it is based not just on employees, but also other travelers like enrollees.
And what is the change for their enrollees?
Sorry?
What is the change for like the sailing center's enrollees?
So the formula would be changed to accommodate the number of enrollees. So for example, if a nonprofit had, 5 employees, but 100 program participants, the cash subsidy would be increased, not necessarily by 20 times, but would be increased to be able to allow the nonprofit to offset the costs of the travel for their program participants in addition to their employees. So that is a material change.
I guess if I was running the sailing center, I'd like to know what a formula like that would be so that I could figure out if it makes much of any difference to my business.
And also how would it be administered? Because again, an enrollee today may enroll for a couple of months, and then it's up to the sailing center or the nonprofit to distribute to their customers. And again, they have customers just like I do. And the question is that sounds like you're giving a subsidy to the nonprofit here, but then they have to somehow get that to their customers. Right? And again, the only thing is you have about 70 to 80 businesses on Treasure Island, and every one of them have employees like I do, and none of that's being covered.
Well,
So Jim, let me give some context to what that would look like. Tom, I'm just looking at it from our membership base, and Jim, what it might look like for people considering coming to the island. So most of our members would fall into a category that would not receive a subsidy, even if you can figure out how to allocate that subsidy. So if you had just 200 of our members from the East Bay who are aggressively accessing the launch, and this launch is one of the best launches in the country, they would be paying, coming from the East Bay, about $3,000 a year to access this launch. If you only had 150 members, from San Francisco, they'd be paying about $2,000 a year. Our members would be paying just 350 of our active, aggressive members accessing the site would be paying about $1 million a year to access the island with these tolls in place. That's a significant number. And I just don't see the benefit that we're receiving in paying those fees. Those are very, very substantial fees. And again, we're already paying subsidies for a ferry. We're already paying, a congestion management fee. So I'm just having a hard time understanding from your figures how you're leveling such hefty fees without explaining what the benefit is to these communities.
Can I ask a question of Rachel and the other folks from the city, which is, this is, a toll proposal that I think is kind of flawed. I think we all, from our side, would agree that it, in one shape or another, it's just a bad idea. My question is, why is the city so insistent on leveling a toll to fund a ferry and increase bus service instead of essentially putting a fee or a tax on the new homes that are going in and out there? Because those are the people who benefit from the new service. They're the ones who are going to create additional congestion going to and from work off the island every day. And I've worked all over California with government, local government, and I've seen benefit assessment districts of every shape and form, from undergrounding districts to levee communities that build new levees, and they put in benefit assessment districts, and there's lots of different terms for it. But that model of, here's a community that's that has a special need, you're building a special bit of infrastructure for that community should pay 100% of the cost of that. So the San Francisco taxpayer should not be paying for a special ferry that goes to a certain neighborhood. But it does make total sense to me. And if I were buying, honestly, if I were shopping for a new apartment and I was looking at Treasure Island and I saw a list of things that I have to pay for, I would expect to see that. That wouldn't be a shock to me. But this seems completely backwards to try to fund a benefit for a special community off the backs of people who are just visiting or just occasional visitors or users of Treasure Island. And then we can get into the other aspect, which is, even if you do build this toll system, is it really, how functional is it going to be? All of these discounts and things. How do you get the word out to somebody who lives in Sunnyvale, who's going to visit five times a year? Even if they did qualify, how is this even going to work? I haven't seen, I have a toll box on my car, and I don't know of any discount program that works off that right now. So, but can you just answer me that basic question of, how did you get here with the toll? It just seems like a shiny, frankly, it just, to me, seems like a shiny kind of public policy thing, but it doesn't really, anyway.
So, Swanee, do you want me to, so Swanee may have something to add about this, the financing of the overall development. So as part of the development agreement package and the whole development approval decisions made in 2011, was a sort of comprehensive financing plan for the overall development, which does include 2 different benefit assessments. And they each have expenditure plans that are associated with them. They are primarily for the open space and other infrastructure, non-transportation infrastructure. That is all, public information. I don't have the sort of the expenditure plans in front of me, but there are these 2 different benefit assessment districts for capital and operating. And the other fee on homeowners is their homeowner dues. And that does have a component that will go towards transportation. So the mandatory transit passes that folks in market rate units need to buy will be paid for out of their homeowner dues.
Where can we find more information about that, Rachel?
Well, TIDA is the owner of that information, but we can provide that to you from them.
That would be great, because that was in 2011. That was a while ago. I'm sure a lot of folks on this call weren't around for that. Actually, I was with Andrew Sullivan's organization at the time, and I did go testify to your board of your planning commission about this project on behalf of SFBA. And I remember there were people who got up and said, we don't want to pay for a new sewer system at Treasure Island. We don't want to pay for this. We don't want to pay for that. So the outcome was, you have a benefit assessment district already set up, which could pay for this stuff. We don't need a toll, it sounds like. So anyway, I'd like to get more information about where that lives, because that was a while ago.
And there was more history behind that. I mean, 2011. That's not when things were decided. It wasn't until 2016 that the toll was extended to a whole bunch of other people. I mean, you know that, Rachel. The June and July 2016 TIMA committee and board meetings, you presented that, why we needed to expand the toll to many more people.
Yes, yes, that's right.
Thank you.
I can elaborate on that. I know you've heard me talk about that before, but if it's helpful, I can speak to that, or just if you have other questions or comments that you want us to hear.
Well, Rachel, you can get into that, but I think, we have covered that. And again, and I'm going to summarize. You basically, you made the assertion that it just didn't make any sense financially if you didn't extend it to everybody that visited the island. That was essentially your conclusion, if I recall. But that being all that, I just wanted to say that, Rachel, you did reach out to us and say that you were going to address some of the points that we sent to the Board of Supervisors and TIMA on February 9th of this year. There were 4 major points about that we addressed that were legal and regulatory things. Are you going to cover any of that, or is that going to be at a different time, or is that not being covered under this particular meeting?
Well, so some of the questions and feedback are about legal regulatory as it relates to BCDC, and we are still in process with BCDC. So as you all know very well, they've expressed to us that while the TIMA board has the authority to adopt a toll policy, they would need to give the toll program a permit. So they've made that clear, and that a permit would need to be approved by them. And that is still a process that we're undergoing with them. So I don't have new announcement on that front, other than just recognizing their communication to us. And on
that's great. All right, so you can't comment on that. We'd like to know when the community is going to hear about what's going to be in that regarding that particular item, because we've outlined it, we've done some work, and it's pretty clear that there is some pretty regulatory and permit issues. I think we also wanted to touch on the fact that the final EIR did stipulate, and we've quoted that site, that visitors to island were not to be charged for any toll or congestion mitigation fees. So again, that's another big thing hanging over everybody's head right now in what you're trying to do. So I think the whole community, the businesses, everybody like to know when we're going to hear something about that. And I'm sure the guys at SFBA are also curious about that as well.
I would really, I see Madison just hopped off the call or hopped off the video. I would really encourage Supervisor Dorsey or somebody in his office to revisit the regulatory documents that granted this land to the city of San Francisco, so that we could avoid a lot of the regulatory issues that we're having because people haven't read nor understood the documents that gave the city the land. Matt Haney certainly hadn't read or understood these documents. I would like to see the other key board members show that they've read and understand the conditions by which the city of San Francisco was granted access to the tidelands. They're very, very clear. The business model outlined in the state land grant is very, very clear. The FEIR is very, very clear. We would not be having these conversations if the Board of Supervisors, which make up the governing bodies of TIMA, read and understood these documents. It's very frustrating for all of us here who, certainly for Tom, Peter Thorner, members of our organization that have been working for 20 years, over 20 years with the city of San Francisco, supporting the city's efforts to get grants from the state to improve access to the island on the conditions that they would abide by the agreements. And they're simply not abiding by these agreements. And we're at a large, we're at a point of conflict because people aren't doing what they agreed to do, and people aren't doing what they're bound to do. We shouldn't be having this conversation right now. So I really would like to urge Dorsey's office to take a leadership role here and read the agreements and abide by the agreements, or if not, go through the proper channels to change those agreements. That's another issue here. There are mechanisms. Things do change. We get that. But the city hasn't been following proper protocol here. And that is the reason that we're having these long drawn out conversations. That is the reason that you're stuck with the BCDC. And we frankly don't see how you get out of that problem because you're clearly going to have a real problem justifying this kind of fee when congestion management fees and ferry subsidy fees and guaranteed access to the shoreline was part of the original agreement. So Madison, I really urge Dorsey to revisit the documents, read the TIOC letter and the SFBA letters. We've outlined very clearly what the issues are there, and we're happy to engage in a dialogue around those issues.
Yeah, let me just say one thing, just to put it in slightly different words. I'm familiar with the MACTIR-PESTRS Act, worked with BCDC for many years in a previous job. And the way I see those laws, similar to the law that protects the coast of California, is that we want to, at a minimum, keep coastal access the way it is. If not, and it should, every local government should encourage people to visit the coast. And the coast, in this case, is our bay shoreline. So really, if you read the BCDC founding documents and all their policies and stuff, they're really trying to encourage the city and county to make things better for people to visit the shoreline. And there's money out there to build parks and to build infrastructure for people to visit and enjoy the shoreline, and highlight that as one of the really cool things about San Francisco. In this case, we have a pretty cruddy looking bit of shoreline around Treasure Island. And it's pretty rough. It's a diamond in the rough, but it's in a beautiful spot. People come out there, hell or high water, they're out there every day. I see them taking pictures and struggling against all of the mess that is being created by the construction to enjoy that shoreline. And what you have with this toll is you're throwing up a roadblock. You're throwing up another huge roadblock for the visitors I'm just addressing recreational visitors at this point here, because even if you give people a 50% discount on the toll, how are they supposed to know they're going to get a toll discount if they're coming from Vallejo? I mean, we've got, I don't know how many millions, 9 million people in the Bay Area. How many people are going to know about some special program that the city has set up for a toll until they get their transponder receipt at the end of the month, and they go, what did I, or they drive off the Bay Bridge and they see, I guess you're going to put up a sign that says $5 toll today, and they're going to go, what? So, think about the fact that, the law that Andrew mentioned, some of the laws about how the city got this property protect that shoreline around the development. And it's supposed to be a donut of public use. And in the middle of that jam donut, you have your wonderful private high-rise. They're going to be great. I love that kind of development. It's dense. There's a lot of great stuff about your Treasure Island development, but there's supposed to be this public access thing around it. And the city is supposed to do everything it can to bring everybody out there and not put up any barriers. So
I'd like to just add one thing. I'm frustrated because this issue has such a big influence on what the cost and the monies are going to be like. And it seems to me that all this little futzing around with who gets this little discount or that is lost in the humongous amount of money that this whole thing ends up being and will completely be changed, or can completely be changed depending upon what happens with BCDC. And not really sure why we're spending this much time moving little pieces around when it's this big piece that's going to determine everything.
And Rachel and Sonny, a couple items. One is going to Tom's point about how do my customers are going to learn about all this stuff. North Bay as well. I have no, again, it goes to the finer point of, in our fourth point in the letter on February 9th about implementation, how you're making a very complicated matrix of discounts and tolls and multivariate discounts and what have you. But we've seen no indication of how this is all going to be implemented through Fast Track or whatever, or Caltrans or whatever it is. So that's something that I think you guys are going to have to provide more detail going forward, just because you're just making it more complicated today, and we still don't see any implementation details, and it goes directly what Tom said, and also what I would say. If I have customers coming from the East Bay or wherever they are, how the hell am I going to tell them how to get this discount? The second of all is, and Sonny, I don't know if, again, I'll go back to your slides, initial slides. Again, this is something I've brought up over and over again. The toll still is bi-directional. Is that correct? Or is it only one way now? So it's not $5, it's $10, because you can't go on the island and come off the island in a different direction like you can on the Bay Bridge or some other places. So the real tolls, and again, I've asked you guys over and over again, please be clear. This is a $10 toll. It is not $5. And if it's discounted off that, then it's discounted off that. It has to be portrayed as a bi-directional toll, which even Matt Haney at just a few months ago, or at the end, he didn't realize it. So it's again, I want you guys to be clear and transparent about what the toll structure is in whatever you guys do.
And point of emphasis on that, your slides today say one way, they don't say each way. There's no other tolls like that in the Bay Area. It's not clear, and we've asked about this several times, and it's still not being presented in a way that's going to allow for understanding.
Well, I guess if you come over during peak time and then you leave later in the evening, it's 7:50 instead of 10. But it goes to another point, which is we're waiting to see, I guess there was some talk about a study, an economic study, and this goes to some of the other data that went into this. There's supposedly the whole rationale being that the visitation to Treasure Island from these other users is somehow causing congestion. And, there's no rationale for that. There's never a traffic jam going on or off Treasure Island. The traffic jam is always on the Bay Bridge, and it's people going by Treasure Island. Will the 8,000 new residents cause additional traffic if they all get in their cars and drive to and from San Francisco? Yes, but we're not talking about those folks. We're talking about the occasional users and the visitors and the people who come to the sailing center, and that is a absolutely trivial amount of traffic. So I just don't see how that is a rationale for charging people. It's not going to, this whole demand pricing thing just falls apart when you look at the percentage of cars that come on the island. And this goes back to the CEQA question, that we're not we're part of the baseline. The users that have been going there for 20 years, the folks that come out to the winery, that been coming to the wine, or to the other existing businesses, that's your CEQA baseline. So we're not part of that impact.
And I think in the chat, a couple people pointed out concerns with construction related projects.
Rachel and Sunny,
Do you have a question?
Rachel and Sunny, I was wondering, how did you think this proposal was significantly different, and why did you think the community would respond positively to this?
The
based on
three-
what you've been hearing so far, right? I just don't understand how this proposal was a significant, doesn't significantly address any of the concerns that have been raised.
Sure. So we brought in 3 types of changes that we were trying to respond to concerns we heard from residents, from additional land uses on the island, especially additional like recreation-based land uses, and other travelers who may not be San Francisco residents. And so one was to deepen the amount of the discount for more people, discount and exemption. So we expanded the number of people who get an exemption. And that includes, there's 2 versions of it, right? But one expands for residents, the other we're trying to expand not just for residents, but for all travelers, the exemption. On the employee front, or not just the employee front, but the land uses front, so the nonprofits, we sought there to respond to the concern that employees are not their primary travelers, and that a much greater share of their travelers are program participants that weren't being factored in. So to change the formula for the subsidy to be based on the real generator of their travel. And then the last piece to do other things, additional, this is the slide Swanee showed with additional affordability measures. So things like secure storage for additional transportation on and off options for things like the sailing camp, that we heard concerns that there weren't adequate other options for folks other than driving. So to introduce some of those other.
Rachel, just a question, and you may not have the answer, but as you know, in about March 10th, TIOC, the whole community group we had basically requested that the Board of Supervisors take a look at an economic impact study of not how the toll is going to just affect congestion, but how it will affect the whole economic development of the island, including like, I've never heard if the developers think that this toll is a good idea. I'd be curious if it's probably going to depress some of their sales. The question is that. And then I believe in just before Supervisor Haney took off and got his new job up in Sacramento, he was quoted in the press as saying that the Board of Supervisors was going to embark upon an economic impact study on how the toll would affect the whole development and the mix of businesses and residents and all that kind of stuff. It's one of the press quotes that he had. Where is there anything happening with that? And if so, when can we hear any results of that?
Yeah, no, we've definitely heard that you're seeking that. So the economic effects of the toll, of course, are completely bundled together with the overall economic effects of the development, which is not just on transportation related economic effects, housing related economic effects, other land use related economic effects, job related economic effects. So we wouldn't do an economic analysis just of the toll in isolation because of its relationship to all of these other components. And the whole Treasure Island Development Program was considered as a program where all of the pieces were working together and contributing a part to the overall success of the program in each in different ways. So we are not preparing a economic impact analysis of the toll in isolation.
Our proposal was not to do it in isolation. In fact, if you read the document that Jim is mentioning, it has a very extensive purview of what kinds of impacts it will have on life on the island. I'm sorry, Jim, you should.
kind of raised this again, Madison. This is an issue of in any basic tax like this. There's usually a very rigorous analysis of why the tax is at the level it's at for very specific reasons. Whether your goal is to achieve congestion management, whether your goal is to raise specific revenues, to provide specific benefits. There's a reason a number is a number. So everybody's been asking, why is the number 10? What's the rationale behind the number? It's a really basic question. You cannot simply throw these numbers out because you think it's magically bundled within a number that will somehow mysteriously reveal itself at some point in the future. There are studies that are done that show you this is the number or the range of numbers to achieve the desired result. And there's none of that study being done here. And that's why this is so unnerving. Not only is it against the regulations that gave the city the land, it doesn't follow the protocols by which you introduce anything like a tax or a toll. These are, Rachel just explained that they have no intention to do any study to justify that number. It's just a number. And that's a very unnerving position to be in when you're the population that's paying this number.
Well, so, I appreciate your comment, Andrew, but just to clarify for folks who might not be aware of the history. So we have the city prepared economic analyses and fiscal impact analyses when they developed the development agreement leading up to the 2011 actions by the city. And that did include analysis of the transportation program, fiscal components, but it was economic analyses of the whole development program. So we're not proposing to redo any of those. Since then, though, something we have done is financial analyses of the, not economic impact, but financial and performance analyses of the mobility management program, which is how we arrived at toll levels, among other things, that all of the toll policies. And yes, one of those was published in 2016, and then the most recent financial analysis was published by us in the beginning of this year.
Well, why I have not seen these. I'm just wondering where they are. Where can we get access to them?
What was the rationale for $10? I've never seen that in any document.
It dates all the way back to the development agreement, actually. So that $5 peak toll level is what the developers and TIDA's economic analysis showed at that time that would be needed. And we have, one of the things that we've tried to do is to not exceed that, because that was the anticipated toll level at the time of the development.
But Rachel,
Let me have, hold on, can I hop in, please?
Yeah,
So
go ahead, Hope.
first, I've been here since 2019, and you keep referencing this financial economic impact. I've been here since 2019. Formerly homeless. I have never, since 2019. So that is well over 14 years ago. I have never seen any impact report that has anything to do with the with any economic, any pattern, anything in the 14 years that I have lived on Treasure Island in regards to the development. That's 2009, and that was before the negotiation of the settlement in 2011, when the city actually agreed to it. We did not see anything there. So that is a continuous false statement that I will continue to call you out on. That is not. And then in an account to that, the population has changed dramatically because of harassment, because of evictions. The population has changed dramatically between 2000 and even to 2021. If you look between 2009, when I first moved in, when the development was actually signed in 2011, and then from 2011, you will see mass evictions of low-income families within that time, which also makes me wonder, is that why are you not doing a separation between the housing and the transportation? Why are you putting them together? Which makes me question, because now we're we're seeing even more people getting pushed out on the island at the same time that you're saying that you're doing an impact analysis with TIDA, but not doing separate transportation. The transportation needs should be separate just because it affects the low income families more than it does. The time that the development will happen and the time that we will just say schools will be at least 10 years after you want to implement these goals. You have no plan for any schools. My babies have to travel at least 2 to 3 hours. And when I say my babies, that's the 500 students in which I support on this island. They have to travel take 3 buses, or they are bused off the island. There are no resources. So I put in the chat and I want this answered. What additional feedback did you get that you thought that whatever this proposal, I didn't even have to look at it because I already know that it wasn't anything that has regards to what we have asked for in community. But what additional feedback have you taken in that we have asked you in all the meetings that we have had about how it will impact our family, how it will impact our income, how it doesn't match up with the needs and the resources that this community has in the time, and how it will strip numerous programs in which I am trying to implement to address the trauma and food insecurity and income issues that exist here. All I see is that the more that you're speeding things up, the faster my residents are getting pushed off this island.
Thank you, Hope. And just to quickly try to answer your question, the additional feedback that we were trying to respond to is the affordability concerns. So deepening the discounts and extending them to more people to be eligible, increasing the amount of the subsidy for nonprofits, particularly those we heard from whose travelers base is not primarily employees, but program participants, and then doing providing additional services beyond those things to respond to some of the other concerns, like inability to bring large equipment over on transit and providing secure storage and things like that.
So it's 5:01. I know Ben has had his hand up for a while, so maybe Ben, would you like to make your comment or ask a question?
Sure, thank you. I think at about 4:05, I put a question in the chat. What % of eligible enrollees are actually enrolled in claiming their like low income status and benefiting from this type of program? I've heard 3 or 4 different people say they don't understand how being eligible for something is equitable and the same as receiving a benefit. So we said, what if they're from Sunnyvale? What if they're from Vallejo? What if they're from San Francisco? I still haven't heard anything about that. So I think you have someone from communications on here, is like, what is your, you said that the top rung is, you said something about 40%. Can you explain how you've had success with that in the past, how it's going to be administered, and how this is going to actually work in any given way, other than essentially overcharging people if they aren't taking on the onus of enrolling in a program they don't know about?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. So the program that we would build on is a program that BATA, Bay Area Toll Authority, is developing that they have not launched yet. They're planning to launch this fall. And so they don't offer any toll discounts for toll drivers right now, as you all know. What they are doing is building upon their transit discount program to include toll discounts in that. And then we would in turn make use of that system. So it's for tolls, the program hasn't launched yet. It's expected to launch in the fall.
Wouldn't it make sense to wait and see how that program works before you would use it for Treasure Island?
We will be closely watching how it works, and we expect that they're starting it as a pilot, I think, with the expectation that they're going to need to refine it through a pilot period.
Yeah, I'm not low income, but I do submit paperwork to justify various things, as we all do. For example, my medical program, and it's a bureaucratic mess, and it takes up a lot of people's time. I just don't. I would like to see how the Bay Area Toll Authority rolls out a discount program and how effective it is, because I suspect a lot of people aren't going to know about it for many, many months. And then when they find out they could have qualified if they had submitted the right forms through the right emails and websites, they're going to go ballistic. And you're going to see like major, if you're talking about the 9-county Bay Area and you're talking about the kind of levels you're talking about, qualifications of 50% of the population is going to qualify. I think this is going to be very interesting to see how they roll that program out. I would definitely wait and see. Wait and see how that goes.
So just to finish up, and I think we're wrapping up here. Again, I want to echo what Andrew said to Madison. I urge Supervisor Dorsey and your staff to read the documentation that we put together for the last 6 months. It's very detailed. It goes into specific details that we brought up here today. And it's very clear that none of them have been addressed really, whether it's the implementation of any discount program or even the legal and regulatory issues that we brought up and outlined in that. So I urge your office and the supervisor to open up a dialogue with us, where we have worked on this for years, literally years, so we can really provide some background into what's going on. And again, hearts out to Rachel and Tilly. They're doing the best they can, but a lot of the issues that we've brought up today are not just about transportation and transportation planning. It's very complicated. And I guess that's the frustration you're hearing from the community today. So hope to have that dialogue with your office soon.
And to that point, TA staff, is there contact info you can send for everyone who attended today's meeting to me?
Yeah, I can send it to you if you want, or Rachel can too. But I'll send it to you. I'll send you a group of all of us that are been active for years. Okay.
That would be excellent. Thank
No
you.
problem. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you very much for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Nice to meet everybody.
Thank you, Madison.
Madison.